Hello everyone. So today we are going to be learning about evaluating and finding credible sources using something called the CRAAP test. Alright, so what I kind of want you to think about first is why do you think it is important that we find credible sources or know how to find credible sources? The first thing I want to talk about is the amount of information available. Now more than ever, we have more information available at our fingertips, and some people say that's a good thing, some people say that's a bad thing. There are pros and cons to it, and one of the cons is that sometimes it's hard to find credible information, to know what you are reading is true, or whoever writing it is a credible source. Another thing we need to talk about is more convincing arguments. If we want our arguments to be more convincing in our essays that we write for our classes, or maybe, let's say, an argument that you're trying to make in speech and debate, we want to be able to find credible resources to back our information up so people take us seriously. And again, this goes along with requirement for higher level research. And as you get into college and start taking college classes, a lot of your professors are going to require you to use the college's databases or Google Scholar or scholarly websites to find research, and you'd be able to determine whether that research is credible. And again, as mentioned here, databases provided by colleges. Snow College, I know, provides their students with a library database. Most colleges do on their websites. And a lot of peer-reviewed and scientific articles are pulled from different journals. And the school pays for all of these articles for you to use. As college students, they're free. And it's a wonderful source. But the main thing that I want to talk about in this lesson is using something called the CRAAP test, which stands for, the C stands for currency, R stands for relevance, A for authority, A for accuracy, and then P for purpose. And we're going to talk about each one of these and what they stand for, and we're going to discuss them more in depth. So, the first letter stands for currency. And whether we're looking to determine whether an article is current, we need to ask ourselves a few questions about it, such as when was the information published or posted? This is important because some topics require that you have more current information. Some studies and experimentation, some of it changes quite often, and you need to have more current statistics or information. Another question you need to ask is, has the information been revised or updated? Right, again, we need to see if it's been updated, whether it has current information, and whether it has been revised by scholars or individuals that are specialists within that research field. It's also important to ask yourselves, is the information current or out of date of your topic, which is the question before, and are the links listed functional? Right, and this is important, and you can usually find the links in the works cited page or the references, and you need to check if these links are functional because they could lead to articles that are out of date or articles that you can't even find anymore. We need to see what sources that this publisher author is using, organization. The R stands for relevance. And when we consider relevance, we need to ask ourselves, does the information relate to your topic or answer your question? What are you trying to research? What are you trying to figure out? Or what are you trying to prove? Does it answer that question? But again, when you're trying to prove something, you have to make sure that it does not contain a bias, which is something we're going to talk about a little later. The next question you need to ask yourself is, who is the intended audience? Right? Is the intended audience someone with expertise in a certain area? Are you going to understand this article? What age level of people is it for? Is it too simple? Is it too complex? Again, this has to do with the question, is the information at an appropriate level? Is it too difficult for you to understand? Is there terminology in the scientific article that you're looking at, for example, that you just don't understand, or you don't understand their experimental methods, which is often something that can be a problem when it comes to searching articles in databases. Another question you should ask yourself is, have you already looked at a variety of sources? And this is important because we need to compare the results from different sources. We need to see whether different publishers, organizations are getting similar results. And if they're not, then it can be a little questionable whether the resource is credible or not. Another question we need to ask ourselves is, would you be comfortable using this source for a research paper? Again, this has to do with all the other questions that we asked. Is this article at an appropriate level that you can understand it and use it properly? Is it credible enough? Is it for the intended audience that you're trying to write this for? Does it relate enough to your topic? Next letter we're going to talk about is A, which stands for authority. And we need to see, first we need to check and see who the author, publisher, or source or the sponsor is. And sometimes these credentials are listed or the organizational affiliations are given, but if they're not, then we can usually do a quick Google search or to determine with the author's credentials or the organization how credible they are. Another thing we need to ask ourselves is, does the URL reveal anything about the author or the source? And when we look at a URL, we can look at the end of it to see whether it has .com, .edu, .gov, .org, or .net. And this often determines the credibility of the information. For example, .com represents commercial, and that is more available for the public to use, so it wouldn't be as credible, but .edu, it has to be educational. For .gov, it has to be provided by the U.S. government. And .org has to be provided by non-profit organizations, so there's less chance of there being a bias. Or there's .net, which stands for network. So the ones you should typically look for are .edu, .gov, and .org. The next A I want to talk about stands for accuracy. Again, where does this information come from? Is it supported by evidence? Is the evidence that you see in the references page or the works cited page or the links that you click on, is it using other credible sources? Again, has the information been reviewed or refereed? Has it been peer reviewed? Have there been people from that category or expertise that have reviewed this article? And can you verify any information in another source or personal knowledge? And we talked about that. And does the language or the tone seem biased and free of emotion? Sometimes we can't always tell if there's a bias directly by the information given, but it can be in the way that they word the information. And again, are there spelling, grammar, or other like errors? Are we oftentimes, like scientific articles that are peer-reviewed or articles that are more important are not going to have errors such as these because they have been reviewed so many times. As compared to, let's say, somebody made a blog or a post or a personal post, more likely to have errors. The last thing we want to talk about is purpose. This stands for purpose. Like, what is the purpose of the information? Is it to inform, to teach, to sell, to entertain, or to persuade? And if it is to, let's say, to persuade or to sell somebody something, then it's most likely going to have a bias. They're only going to rely on information from one side of a topic. But if it's to, let's say, inform, then maybe it's less likely to be biased. Another thing we need to ask ourselves is, do the authors or sponsors make their intentions or purpose clear? Is there a clear point that they're trying to get across, and do they have information, credible information, to back that point up? Is the information fact, opinion, or propaganda? right? Is this factual? Is somebody trying to sell something or persuade something? Is it supposed to be for entertainment? Does the point of view appear objective and impartial? Meaning, is it factual? Is it not biased? And again, are there political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, or personal biases? And why I emphasize bias so much? Because, like it stated here, there can be many ways in which an article can be biased. And one that I want to focus on in particular is political bias. There's a website called allsides.com. So when you go to write essays for this class, this is one resource that you can use to determine whether something has a political bias. And we like to look at media bias. Like, let's say you're doing a topic or a research topic that maybe doesn't have as many scientific articles on it, and you have to go and find news reports or reports from different sources of media, and this just kind of shows, whether something is more centered, whether it's not super left or super right, in their political viewpoint. And this shows a lot of the more popular media platforms. So yeah, that is basically it for the lesson. But what I want you to do now is this. With your knowledge of the CRAAP test, and we say CRAAP, it's kind of a play on words because if your article doesn't check out with each one of the letters of the CRAAP test and what they stand for, it is crap. It is literally not, it's not a good article, it's crap. So what I want you to do now is I want you to think of an academic topic that interests you, and I want you to do some research and find, either through a database or Google Scholar, and I want you to find an article that has to do with that topic. And once you pick an article, I want you to use your knowledge, what you learned of the CRAAP test, to determine whether it is a reliable source and whether or not you would use that in an essay or a presentation. And for the assignment specifically, I want you to take each letter of the CRAAP test or write a paragraph evaluating whether it is a paragraph for currency, a paragraph for relevance, a paragraph for authority, a paragraph for accuracy, and a paragraph for purpose. And hopefully after that, you have a better understanding of how to use the CRAAP test to determine whether a source is credible or not. And that is all for today. Thanks, everyone.